Greetings and welcome to this episode of Let's Create Something with Trapcode Tao in After Effects. In today's episode, I'm going to share with you a super easy and fun to use technique to create abstract looping and minimalistic geometric backgrounds. I swear it's going to be easier to do than to say. So there always comes a time when you've been asked as a motion designer to create random abstract geometric backgrounds, and we all know the tools that we can use to do that. There are many. Only with the shape layers and repeaters we can come up with pretty nice stuff. There's always the kaleidoscope we can use. But let me show you a little recipe that I've come up with, and it's going to be a great occasion to look into the new version of Trapcode Particular. And also it's going to be a great occasion to look at how we can combine Trapcode Tao and Particular on a super nice workflow. As always, I'm going to show you the basic principle. And if you don't know at all what you're doing, you can follow me step by step as we do it. And if you understand, by no means feel obligated to do the same thing as I do. You can use it as a reference for the basic principle, but I'm just here for the preliminaries. I mean, for the real action, I'm really sure that you can experiment and come up with real nice stuff on your own. So let's start doing this, and we're going to create a new project. So let's create a new composition. I'm going to hit Control N, and we're going to make this 1080 by 1080. As you see, I'm using CC now because the new Trapcode suite only works in CC now. They've dropped compatibility with CS6, so that was my cue to switch. So let's add Trapcode Tao on this. We're going to start to create our particle. So let's first create a solid. I'm going to hit Control Y there, and I'm going to click OK and add our Tao effects to that. So we're going to create really simple wireframe geometric shapes. So first thing we want to do that is we're going to set the draw mode in the rendering section. We're going to set that to wireframe. As soon as we do that, our default shape becomes all wire looks, and we're going to right away turn off the ambient occlusion because we won't need that kind of stuff. It's for the shadows. Next, we can already go to density instead of flat. I'm going to bring out more. We're going to remove the shade, the light shade of that. Like we're going to have entirely flat. So if we bring the normal effect to 0, as you see there, we have all of this as a white wireframes. So second thing now that we're going to do, we're going to repeat some pieces here. So now we're extruding a whole path around this circle here. Is the default path generator that we're going to use. But in the segments, instead of using extrude n-gons, we're going to repeat n-gons. This is going to make insert that instead of having the whole thing extruding around the circle, it's going to be tiny pieces, and the amount of pieces that we have here is relative to the amount of segments. So if I put 6, we're going to have 6 pieces there. For the moment, we have lots of lines there, diagonal lines. I want to keep it as basic as possible. So first thing that we might want to remove is the chamfer. So that's kind of a little bevel. We'll bring it less detail to our shape. Also in the tessellate here, we can set that to quads. So it's going to remove the lines, diagonal lines for the side. And let's angle those. Right now, by default, they're oriented to the path. So we're going to uncheck that option here. So we're going to have it, they're facing front of us. So let's make them square. So instead of 3 sides, which makes for a triangle, we're going to add one more to make some squares. And we can check off the caps to remove the unwanted lines there. I would really like to be able to keep the caps, but to remove the wires on them. It'd be nice to have that as an option. So we have our basic thing that we're going to animate into a particle. So we're going to simply animate the size of this as it grows on, and as it shrinks to a single cube and goes back. So right now we have some perspective in there. We can see the depth of our cube. I want to have them look as flat as possible. So I want them to look like squares, not cubes. So one way to do that would be simply to decrease the size Z to bring that at 0, and we would automatically deal with squares instead of cubes. But what I want to do actually is keep them as cubes, but cancel the perspective of the view, so the camera. That's how we're going to do it. We're going to create a camera, so Control-Alt-Shift-C. That's going to open up the panel for the camera, and by default, an After Effects camera is 50 millimeter. So as we click OK on that, nothing should change. That's as if we had no camera at all, or a default camera is the same thing that we get on display here. I'm going to simply add a null, so Control-Alt-Shift-Y to create a new null, and this null is simply going to serve the purpose of a dolly for our camera. So I'm going to set its color to pink, make it 3D, and parent the camera to it. But the real deal now, that's what we're going to do here to cancel the perspective. We want to go into the options of our camera. So to do that, either we go to the camera settings here, or as we can see, the Control-Shift-Y shortcut to get in the options. And we want to have the angle of view reduced. So right now 50 millimeter, if we choose another preset, 80 millimeters, it decreases the angle of view, and as you can see here in the preview, it cancels a little bit of the perspective we had here. Look, and it also zooms in. So let me get back in here. And as we increase this, we get closer and closer, and we have less and less perspective. So let's go as close as as far as we can with the presets here, and we lose it all because we now have to get to pull back. So let's hit C to cycle between the different camera tools, and we're gonna pull back. So let's pull back, and we still, like, as you can see, we almost have no perspective here, but we still have a little bit. We're gonna cancel it all. So let's go back in the options, and right here the angle of view there is the maximum on the preset, but we can still go even smaller than that, and we're gonna bring it all the way down to 1. I don't think it's a good idea to go underneath that, but now we're zoomed in again. So let's pull back, and as we pull back, we don't see it because by default there's some kind of short-sightedness occurring with Trapcode Tao, because its visibility in the visibility section here is set to the far distance is set to 10,000 pixels by default. So anything beyond that will become invisible. So what we're simply going to do here is add 2 zeros there to transform this value into 1,000,000. And we're also going to add 2 zeros there and 2 zeros there. And we're going to keep on pulling back. Alright, until we see our squares. Oh, there are squares. Look at that. And I want to get as far as possible with the angle of view to have the lines as thin as possible and to cancel all the perspective. We don't want any diagonal lines in there. If any diagonals, we're going to direct them ourselves. So a cube, a square, when it's rotated 45 degrees, it gives us a diamond. So let's do that. Let's rotate Z in the segments, right? And they're all become nice little diamond shaped. So let's go back in the path generator, and we're going to set up some keyframe here. So let's go, like, if we go to 0, it's only 1 square because they're all piled up. So let's find a fun alignment here. So really no purpose, no true reason for that, but kind of suits me to align geometry. I like doing that a lot. So I'm gonna just line up both these diagonals there, just to see if we can get some nice pattern out of that. And as you can see here, we need to put a tinier value, something in between. So 27.25. We want to have we want to have it as perfect as possible. So right there, it looks really perfect. And I know what you might be saying right now, Dominic, what are you over complicating stuff using Trapcode Tao to do something as simple as that? These are only squares. We can do that with the shape layers and the repeater. I mean, yeah, of course, but remember, we're keeping our stuff 3D. Kind of had this orthographic view, and that's fun. That's how I want to keep things. So if I rotate them like 90 degrees, it puts them upside. Let's increase the size of that. So by default, when our squares are not really squares, they are rectangles. So let's set the size Z to 71, which will make them squarish. Doesn't look like square yet. Let's put 71. And as we rotate them, put them upside down, they will always have the same proportion ratio. So let's keyframe that. Sorry, I drift off a little bit there. So we were 27.15, and we're gonna add a keyframe on frame 0, and we're gonna go up to the frame 90. It's gonna be our last frame. We're gonna duplicate our keyframe there, so simply click once more here to add another one, and I'm gonna hit the plus sign here to zoom in, and we're gonna go at frame 45, so right in between both keyframes, and we're gonna set this value to 0. So now the interpolation, and we can close it down. So let's go to frame 89, and let's hit end to close the work area, and as we look at that, it shifts from one state to another. We can ease those keyframes here if we want to easy ease, if we want a smoother motion, and if we wanted to linger even longer on this shape here in between, we can get in the graph mode and simply pull a little bit of these handles here to make it stay a little bit longer in the middle, and to have a little bit more of a bounce, maybe to have them slow down at the end and on start just a little bit. So that's what we're getting now, and we can zoom in a little bit more, try to cover a little bit more of our space there. So that's our basic animation. Let's use that as a particle to create a background out of it. So now we want to keep our composition to the length of our work area here, so 89 frames. We're gonna right click here on this gray bar here, and we're gonna trim to comp to work area. Now we're gonna create a new composition, at least 360 frames maybe, and this one is going to be the particular, and this is going to be the Tao particle. So this is the comp we've worked in up to now, and this is a new one. We're gonna bring the Tao particle there. I'm gonna shut it off, and we're gonna create a new solid, Control Y. I'm gonna call this particular, and we're gonna bring in our beloved particular effect. Where is it? Particular Trapcode. Let's slide it in, and how many times have you seen the default? But now we have more options. Yay! So do we want to get in the designer? I don't know. We have the designer. It's something I'd maybe show off on the course of this episode. So let's set this quite basic. Okay, so first thing, we want the emitter behavior. We want to emit just on the first frame. So to do that, instead of emitting all the frame, I'm going to set it to explode. So this is going to only emit on the first frame, and it's exactly as if we would keyframe the amount of particle to 0 on the second frame at the continuous setting, or in the previous version of particular. And the emitter type, we're going to use the grid. So yeah, we have a grid now. So we don't want to have any velocity there, and we're on the emitter type now. We're going to go to the where is it? Particle, the motion. the motion. The velocity is 100. We're gonna set that to 0, and we have a basic grid. So I don't really like to work in the designer because we can't really keyframe stuff. But let's keep on doing it. Let's go to the particle type, and let's select a sprite and choose sprite, and we're gonna that's our moment. We're gonna leave the designer because let's get it back to sphere. Now we have created our grid. I think we have a couple more options we can look into. The size of the grid, we can emit bigger than that. So let's say 1080, like our composition. And they all disappear after 3 seconds because that's their lifetime by default. We can have more of them, exactly like we do in form. We can have more particles in the grid. Let's keep it by default 5 like that. Let's apply it so we can have it now out of the designer. We can keyframe our stuff and set our custom particles. Oh yeah, one thing that I might mention here, the amount of particles, we just need to put 1. Now that we're emitting as a grid, if we emit as a point, it won't emit anything at 1 and explode. Like, we would need much more than that to see something, and we need some velocity as well. Like, but let me not get you off in the wrong course here. Let's go back to our grid, and we just need 1 particle to emit. It's going to emit 1 on each area of the grid. So just 1. Don't need more than that. And let's get down to the particle here, and for the particle type and for the life. Oh yeah, I think it's great to mention that as well. For the life, the particle life, things are good right now because our particle length is 3 seconds. 90 frame, it's 3 seconds. So that's the default that we have in particle. If we would have any other kind of duration in this comp, I would put, it would reflect that this value needs to be the same as our looped animation. So first things out, and no life random for that. We're not allowed in this thing. So let's set the particle type to sprite, and let's choose our sprite. So what is that? I don't want to choose a sprite. I want to use a texture, and I want to use my Tao particle. I want to use that layer as a particle. So I'm gonna select that, and Tao is gonna tell me that it's too big, but it's no worry. We're just emitting 1 particle. I wouldn't never suggest that size of a particle for something really complex, but in this situation, it's all right. And oh, I see that it now accepts 500. It used to be 250. It looks like Particular has become more confident over the years. That's great. So let's click OK, and it tells us, but we don't mind. We'll still gonna use it on this dimension, but we're gonna need to increase its size. So let's do that. And let's hit play. Let's close the work area on frame 89 so we can have something that loops. And there we have a nice grid pattern. Let's increase the size even more. And do we have oh, we have the first frame that is, I don't know exactly the reason for that, but it's become entirely dark. I don't know the detail about this, but I know the fix. It's quite easy. Simply select the particular layer and then hold Alt and hit page up. So it's gonna just bring it 1 frame to the left, and now on frame 0 we're gonna have something. Or you can start the render from frame 1, but that's how would do it. So now we're using our particle that is a custom looped animation, and we're using that through a grid with particular. So if we change that, it doesn't change anything. It would be nice. Our grid, we can have it individual dimension. So let's have it 1080 on each. So there we go. And this seed doesn't change anything, it seems, or I think we need to stop it. We need to refresh it. Will it change? No, it stays the same. But if we change the random seed from the texture here, we'll have a different pattern. So it's always gonna loop. Which is pretty nice. And now let's see how we can go a little bit further with that. Yeah, we don't have any velocity, so it doesn't move, so that's why it doesn't affect the... Oh, 656 might be a little too much. Let's keep it at 1 there. Let's try to put a little bit less on the Y. I don't know what's the difference between that and that. I may look into that. So now we have one system that's using one custom particle, and because it's set to random loop, and if you have an older version of Particular, it might be set to current time by default. So if we do this, we have them all lined up, pretty lined up. But if we set random loop, that means that it randomly starts from a different spot each time it picks the particle. So each of them starts from a different point in time, and they all loop, so they will all be offset at some point. And that's why when we change the seed, it also changes. Oh, that's an eerie seed. It's all lined up. Let's change that. Oh, no, not that seed. Let's change that seed. So we might get different results right here. And you can keyframe the emitter size as well, like depending on what you want to do exactly. You could also use form to do something like that. It's not the only way to do it, but I thought it would be fun to show off the grid in particular. And it's my guess, but I guess that actually more people own Particular than people do own form. And it's just a guess. I don't know that to be true for sure. And let's try to use two particles. So that's our first particle that we've made here. Let's duplicate our composition. So Control D. There we have another one. It's the same. Let's just change the angle. Not the angle of this, but let's change the segment, and let's rotate it 45 degrees like that, and then we have this super fun secondary shape here that we can also bring back here. That's our first system. Let's make another one. So we're going to use our second particle here. I'm holding Alt here and dragging this to replace the composition in there, so that automatically replaces it. And any type of looping content that we would put here would get as an output a nice little fun and simple animation. It's nothing ultra revolutionary, but it's some super fun recipe to experiment with. I'm sure you can come up with plenty of crazy stuff using that simple technique. What if we wanted to combine two different animated particles in the same? That's doable. So we have two particles now. We have particle number 1 and particle number 2. Let's make a group out of that. So we're gonna bring this both selected to the little icon there. It's gonna open this little panel, and then we're gonna tell it to make not multiple but a single composition and to sequence the layers. No overlap. Let's click OK. So now we have one composition that shows this and this sequentially. That's going to be our Tao particle group. And let's once again duplicate our particular, and let's get in here. So let's look at other settings that we have here for the time sampling. Random loop. So we have split clip loop. There are 3 options for random still frame. Now they wouldn't play at all, but it gives nice way to output still patterns for still images, maybe, I don't know. Random play once, they will all play and then they'll shut off. And random loop, they'll all loop. But split clip, now if we tell it split clip loops, this will ungray out this option here down there, number of clips, and that's exactly the amount of clips that we have too, so we're going to leave it at that. And that means that it's going to pick either one or the other. Let's change that. So okay, one step that I forgot here, we still have the particle 2. We want to switch up this one, so hold Alt with this selected with the group there, and we simply want to stretch that out. So now we have both, and I don't think that's a good idea. The angles doesn't quite match up, so let's do something else. We're going to go in the particle number 2 in here, and instead of having it like that, let's keep it at square. Let's keep it as square stuff. So let's bring it like that. Let's have this type of an animation on this. So we have this and that's, I think that'll line up a little bit more. So that's the thing though, with the split clip, it's a super fun option, but there's one missing that I would like to have there. Because now it's split clip loops, it does correctly what it says. It's splitting our particle into 2 sections, and they must be equal duration for that. And also we have on the last frame, we have a little twitch here because we need this composition to be 1 frame longer than that. It actually needs to be 181, so 1 frame after the last one, and it will show up black in here, but let's simply stretch it up here, and if we refresh that, I think that it should fix the last frame twitch that we have, because it's switching from one to the other. But the thing is that they're all they're not offset in time anymore, and that's the option that I would like to have. Like, I would like to have one more split clip loop. So split clip loop play once, it plays once and it's stop playing. Split clip loop, it loop, but it start from the beginning. And split clip stretch, this will slow down your particle based on your particle lifetime, but let's get in on this another time on this subject. But the option that I would like is split clip loop random. Like, it splits the clip, it loops, but it starts from a random point in each of them. But we don't, unfortunately, that's not an option that we have. Don't despair, my friends. Now we have the possibility to have more than one system on the same effect. So we're gonna we're gonna take advantage of that. So let's go back a few steps. I just wanted to show you that this doesn't work, but it sure works for something that would be all lined up there. Like we can have as many type of particles as we want, but it would always be, they will always not be offset on time, always be playing at the exact same time. So let's make another for particular. Let's duplicate our second one because that's more like what we're gonna use. So this, and this is how what it looks like with the square composition only. Pretty neat. So what we want to do actually is create a second system on the same effect, and this system we're going to tell it to use a different sprite. It's as simple as that. So in order to create a new system, we can add a new system here, but let's go in the designer, because we've already set up our master system, and we just want the option to duplicate it. So if we click it right here, then we can duplicate the system and have another instance of it. But as we're using a custom composition as a particle sprite, it won't work with the live designer. So we're just gonna apply it, and then what's happening now is that we have two systems. We have the master system and we have system 2. So that brings up a whole lot of possibilities if you think about it. We used to have only one possible system in each, and if we wanted to have more, we had to duplicate the layer or the effect. But now we can, on the same effect, we're gonna add a second one. So now we have the system 2 selected. As you can see here, all the properties have system 2 in parentheses. If I choose that, it's the master. Or we can show all the systems at once, but I like to keep it clean and tidy. So let's choose a system number 2. And right now it uses the same seed, so we're going to change the seed. And where is the... So it doesn't change. Oh yeah, that's right, because we need to change the seed from the texture. So right there in the texture, it didn't pick it up because we didn't tell it to. So let's put down our particle 1 composition, and let's tell our system 2 to deal with this instead. So where are you there? Particle 1. I'm just noticing this. It seems that we don't have any ways to randomize the seed of the texture for this one. It only works with the master one, as I understand it now. Oh, I didn't think about that. Well, that's a bummer. And this one change. If I have a different seed there, it doesn't change. Oh no. Well, can I check in this? Oh, I'm sure I was able to switch that. All right. We cannot have the seed different for that. So how can we put more random in there? Maybe change the grid control. So on the master system, on the system number 2, we can have the grid, not the OBG, but the grid. Let's have 5 particles in there. I'm sure that I was able to change it with that. Relative to master. If I uncheck that, okay, no, that's just for the position. Well, So maybe now we can also, let's get to the particle of our second system, the rotation. Maybe we can rotate 90 degrees, can change the emitter size for the second one. Maybe get something different. It's quite a mess in there, huh? But you get the idea. I was sure that in the version that I was messing with, it used to work with. Anyway, so yeah, let's maybe add in some turbulence, not to affect the size but the position, and then we can scramble their position, but then have the scale to 0. No, have the will they wiggle if I do that? Yeah, they'll wiggle around. And that, if we wanted to loop, I don't think that we can have it loop. So let's not affect the position there. So to look only at the second system, right there. I would so much like this to change something. Now why doesn't it change it? I'm sure that it used to do it. If I have it to continuous, will it change? No. If I have the life to 6. If I have it to split clip loop. No, I want it to random. So let's get both our systems there. The first system I want even less on the grid. Where's the grid? The emitter. Let's change that to 4. Let's get in the particle, change the random seed. Let's get this back to the size of our comp. So let's keep only system 2 for the moment. Hey, look at that. It doesn't affect the system. Oh, okay, I'm changing the first one. Let's change that. 1080, 1080, 5. So maybe I like that. Maybe I want to add a little bit more of randomness on the size. So let's get a particle in our second system and let's increase the size random there. So we'll if I change the random size, now the seed will change something. That's why I used to be able to change the seed. Alright, so let's put a little bit randomness in the size, so then we can bring back our master system, which has the square, and the square I want less of them, so let's put 3 and 3, and let's have this smaller, and let's add a little bit of, let's change the seed, and yeah, that, no, so that's this number 2. We're gonna go in system number 1, and I'm gonna set 3, 3. System number 2, I want to have 5, 5, 1080, oops, and 1080. And for the master system, which is the cubes, let's have some randomness in the size, and now let's change the random seed. Randomness in the size gives more control on the overall randomness, but not for the position. So system 2, can move it a bit on the side, and system 1, if I move it, it moves both because it's set to be relative to it. So let's keep that in mind, and there we have some randomly motion going on. It's kind of easy to color that directly from Particular, so let's end this off with the coloring. So let's go into the particle, and let's only look at our second system for the moment. And right now we have it at sprite, so we want to choose sprite fill. And if we choose sprite fill, now we have set color at start. We're gonna maybe try over life. And does it? We're still on the wrong one. We were on the master system. We want to change the system number 2. So let's do that again in here, sprite fill. And where is the sprite fill and color over life? And by default, it will cycle the default particular colors. So that'll loop. And we can change that over here, or we can change it to random from gradient, which will pick any of them and color it differently based on this gradient. So that's also something that's cool. We can set the blending mode to add, so we'll have a little bit more nice color blending between them. That's neat. I like that. So that's one way we can color that. I'm going to save this as a third one. And of course we can also, let's open this up, our master system. Let's set this back to sprite normal, so they are all white again. And let's get in our particle here. That's our particle 2 that we're using for our master system. And let's look at how we can manually color each one of those squares using one specific technique here. We're gonna use the colors and not texture. So to do that, since we're using the path generator, we're not using a light, we can put the colors on the light. So we're gonna activate the offset animation sequence, but we're not gonna animate anything with that. We're just gonna put some keyframes for the colors. So let's go to frame 300, and we don't have a composition that's that long, so I'm gonna temporarily switch it back to 360, but remember to bring it back to 90 once again once we're done with that, because 300 is the number of frames used by Tao to create the geometry by default. By default it's 10 seconds. So let's keyframe the OAS color here on frame 300. Let's go hit home, add another keyframe on that, so right there. So we need to divide this in 6, so 300 divided by 6, we have 6 squares, it gives us 50. So each 50 pixels, each 50 frames, we're gonna add a keyframe there. So on frame 100, we're gonna add one. On frame 150, we're gonna add one. Frame 200, gonna add one. 250 also. And we're gonna select them all and right click on one of them and select toggle hold keyframe. So now let's set the color. This one, let's make it red. So it's just coloring the first one because that's the section here reserved for the first square. Let's color this one that color. So we have our second one there, and let's keep on going like that. So we're gonna add a different color for each of them. Green, yellow maybe, and the last one, and it's not gonna be this one. Look at that. Let's what color don't we have yet? Orange. So it doesn't work for this one. So either we just remove the last one, or so like this. It kinds of they're all gonna be colored that way, and we can also in the rendering set it to add. So right in the blending mode, we can set that to add. We're gonna have a much nicer blending in between the colors, and when they all meet up, it's gonna be white. And since we're at add, we can maybe in the materials and setting, we can drop down the opacity if we want to have some nice glows afterward, post glows. So let's do that. Let's reduce it a little bit, or maybe reduce that, or either we do it in particular. But let's go back to our fourth particular effect. So now we're looking at just the cubes. Here they are colored not in particular but in Tao, and we have our second system with these that are colored from particular. So now these we can change the we've toned the others down, because what we're gonna do, let me just shut that off for a moment, and we're gonna add an adjustment layer. So Control Alt Y, and on this adjustment layer we're gonna add a levels effect first. Let's drag this up here, and we're gonna also put a glow. So let's add that after the levels. So let's shut off the glow for the moment, and let's re-brighten up our stuff, and let's open the glow. So let's use two glows. The first glow, we're gonna set its radius to 1, and we're not gonna make it very bright. But the second glow here, Control D to duplicate the effect while it's selected, and we're gonna increase the radius a little bit. We're gonna increase the intensity. Let's try to reduce the threshold here until we kind of get something that's glowy. Will we? And then maybe we need to let's set that to 32 bits per channel. So we're gonna alt click on the 8-bit here twice to make sure that we have the nice glows. And now they're all over saturated because I forgot this step. So if you forget it, remember that. Now we can decrease our second glow and just have something around, like some neon stuff, blending neon stuff, something like that. I don't know for the moment. So it's kind of cheesy, but you get the idea. And now if we bring back the other system, so let's go back to particular. I'm gonna add the second system. It's all gonna be crazy, because first let's solo it. So I'm gonna shut off the master system. So first we've toned the other down in Tao, but this one, let's tone it down right in particular options. So it's set to add, and the opacity here, let's bring that down right there to get approximately the same result. And we can even increase the opacity random. It's going to give us more variations. So now we have something that kind of both works, and maybe it's too much when we have both at the same time. I don't know. You tell me. So that's pretty cool glowing things. And remember, you can put anything in there to loop. And if you last thing we're gonna do, and after I swear I'm done, we're gonna have some lateral motion in there. So let's just shut off our color correction layer for the moment. And I'm really gonna do it quick because I don't wanna get overcomplicated with this. So we're gonna do it the old way. So now I have one effect with two systems, and I wanna duplicate that so I can move laterally to another instance of it a little bit far off to the further to the right, something like that. So I'm gonna duplicate the effect, right? And first of all, let's create a camera. We don't have a camera in here, so Control Alt Shift C, and let's create a 50mm default camera. And let's create a dolly for that camera, just an old habit. Set it 3D, and we want to make some lateral motion, so we're going to keyframe the dolly. Let's keyframe that. I'm going to go to frame 90, and now we don't see it because it doesn't emit as far as that. So let's just go to frame 89 for the moment, and we're going to add 1080 pixels to that. So plus 1080, and that's going to result in our whole stack of particles moving up to the right, up to the left. And while it's doing that, we want to have another one that waits for us to stand still on frame 90 here. Let's bring up our keyframes. So we could make more systems, we could like do that, but at this point it's kind of easier to do it this way. So we're going to duplicate the effect. We're not going to duplicate the layer. We can still keep it on one layer. We're going to duplicate particular. So now we have two effects, each with two systems. And on the second one, the only thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to the emitter, and we're going to go make sure that we go to the master system emitter, and we're going to add 1080. So plus 1080 pixels, and that'll bring it all the way over there. So let's make some markers here on frame 0, shift 1, and let's get to the last frame. Oh yeah, prior to the last one. So now we have something at the end. So let's look at our transition. So oh yeah, it's not showing up. First thing we should do when we duplicate two particular instances on the same layer is go down to the rendering section, and right here the render mode, no, not the render mode, but the blending mode, we have to set it to normal. Alright, it's just a little quirk we have to remember to do, but that's now if we go to this frame and this frame, this is the frame just prior, so let's play that back. It doesn't have the glow, we shut it off so it renders a little faster for us right now, but we're just gonna verify if it loops. So right there it moves laterally, pretty random, and it's looping. So a little minor thing that we can maybe fix here is, as you can see there, if I shut this, the first one off here, you can see that this one is spilling there. So perhaps what we might want to do is, because when I go there it doesn't spill. Yeah, see, we have parts there. So how can we fix that? If it's not noticeable, don't fix it, but if you can clearly notice it, so that means that we have, it might get a little bit more render time, but let's continue to create instances so they fill up the gap. So let's also go in the emitter of the master here, and let's once again add 1080. So what that'll do is that it'll bring over our spill here. We're gonna have a third one, and also we can fix the same, like we have another spill here on the other side, so that would be one that we fix right here on frame 1, and why do this effect is set to normal? Yeah. Why isn't it showing up? Why is that a bad stack? Wait a minute. So there our spill. I mean, this needs to be down there, and this one, the first one, now the third one has become the first one, but let's set the first one in the stack to none, and all the other ones should be the normal. Let's try that. I'm sorry if it's a little bit confusing. So where am I at? Right there. So this one, why don't I see the rendering options of that? Let's close everything. Ah, that's because it's the system 2. Rendering. There it is. Blend mode, normal. Oh, blend mode, none for this one. This one has to be to normal. And this one is set to normal. So check back the first one. None. Alright. Let's go back to frame 0. Alright, frame 1. Last frame. We do get our spill back, but we do miss the one that's here, right here. So usually I would kind of move stuff around, but sometimes you just want to fix it rapidly and you have the render time. So let's copy one more, and let's copy this one, and I think that also I'm gonna bring it there, and now this one has to become blend mode normal, and this one blend mode none, and now this one that we've duplicated from the first one, the emitter, we're gonna go minus 1080. No, I did it too fast. So it's right there. So it kind of needs to be last. No, it needs to be first. Or it needs to be last. And the blend mode to normal. And the first one was this one. Set the blend mode to none. So it's just what would be showing on the next frame, I guess. So we don't need a fourth one. see, it's part of this part is spilling off here, so we would need to push this on the other side. Why doesn't it work? So let's take this. So that's our effect. Let's toss it on the side. The minus is the master, minus 1080. And here we have a spill. But it is not the same spill as this spill. Oh yeah, it's just that they're there. Alright. I'm just, if I would move it a little bit there, they would be there waiting me, and that is the for. Okay, so you know what to do if you get the spills, but in this occasion they don't. I'm gonna leave it like that, and it should loop fine. And I'm gonna put back the glows. They're a little bit over the top right now. I quite agree, but that works as a loop, does it? I did move that, did I? Should put it back at the initial value. So let's test this out. And yeah, it's looping, so it's not entirely random. We've set up some stuff manually, but it's semi-manual, semi-generative, and there's a whole lot more possibilities with that. I would like to see what kind of results you can come up with messing around with that simple technique. So thank you very much for watching, and as always, see you next time.